What is up, everybody? I'm George Mossey. I'm here with Marshana, Dahlia, Spavento. This is part 2, 90 Day Fiancé, Happily Ever After, Season 6, Episode 7. We're deep in this, guys. So let's just jump right in. Angela found out she is not getting her surgery, and Angela met her match. America had an amazing moment last night. Angela is the most controlling person anyone has ever come across, and Angela has met her match with her doctor, and her doctor has canceled her surgery, released her as a patient, and given her a nicotine contract.
You know what? I love the doctor. I love the doctor. And I love that for once in Angela's life, in her narcissistic life, that she has to understand that the rules apply to you. Okay? You can't always think that you're above everyone and that you're the one who dictates to everyone else what to do. No, no, no. He's the doctor and you're the patient. And in the hierarchy of this exchange, the doctor supersedes you. So no, you can't say, well, that's rude of you, doctor. I like you. I like you. You're who I want. You can't tell me that I'm not your patient. Yes, he can. Yes, he can. Okay. And if you're still going to continue to smoke cigarettes, which is deadly, does he want to be responsible for the necrosis that will happen on your face? Not even an area of your body that you can conceal with clothing. It will be your face. So not only should he not accept that liability, Angela, you should listen, because do you want that? Do you think that it can't happen to you? That if you continue to smoke and he does this surgery, that you can't have tissue death on your face? Okay.
I cannot believe she was under the impression that she could convince a medical doctor to go against procedure based on her charm. First of all, what
Are
charm?
you not shocked? I'm not shocked. She's a malignant narcissist. So I mean I could see it coming. This is what they do. This is what they do. And she wants to make the doctor a victim of her narcissistic abuse. I'm sorry, Dr. Sabag, I'm getting his name wrong, but he is not Michael. You cannot dictate and control him and tell him what happens. He is a doctor that has a medical degree, years of money and time invested in building his practice, and now here he is on national TV with you. He is not going to jeopardize his future, nor should he. So, team doctor.
I am too. And based on what I've seen, she says she's not smoked for more than a week. I don't think she's going to have this surgery. So we're going to leave it at that. We'll figure it out later. Let's talk about Mike and Natalie. So this was a Thanksgiving dinner at Trish's that got super, super awkward. I don't even know where to begin. From Natalie scolding Mike from touching her private areas in front of her mother to, oh my gosh, Natalie accusing Trish of calling her a hooker. I don't even know where to go. Oh, and there was actually a conversation of where Trish told Natalie she was getting old and she needs to have kids. Like, I don't even know where to begin with the awkwardness of this situation. I knew that having Thanksgiving dinner at Trish's house was going to be a Natalie bashing session.
Okay, they harp on Natalie. Okay, great. It's wrong for anybody to speak to anybody, particularly a woman to another woman, to say, get on with having kids, you get no. I mean, it's just get out of people's uterus, get out of their bedroom, get out of their private lives. Okay, so Trish needs to worry about her bangs from the 1980s before she sits here and worries about Natalie's reproductive system. I'm sorry, Trish, if you watch this, you are loved, but you were out of pocket last night. Okay, Mike doesn't do much to bridge the divide between his wife and Natalie. But I'm going to bring this back home to Natalie. Natalie has deep-seated mental issues, and she actually doesn't even need a therapist. She might need a psychiatrist to help her deal with these breaks that she has. So for me, I'm just like, this is so toxic. It's so unhealthy. Natalie's not fit to be in a relationship with anyone, not even herself. She needs to work on so much. So there's nothing Mike can do to help her. And he's not really helpful anyway. He's kind of passive aggressive. Natalie's always storming off. She's always leaving. They do this really, really crazy cycle. I'm not sure if they're in it for the makeup sex, if that's really wild and crazy and that's what gets them to come back for more. But I actually don't even want to talk about them much every week because it's so annoying. Every time they come on the screen, I roll my eyes because it's like these people hate each other so much. This is not even a marriage. This is a session in fear and loathing.
Yeah, I agree. On that note, let's not even talk about them anymore. Let's end this with Olivia and Andre. So let's start out. Andre visits Chuck to tell him about pieces of his employment requirements that he needs to avoid deportation. Notice I say pieces. He didn't give him the actual story. He gave him the parts of the information that would benefit him because Andre is a manipulator. He knows that he can tell people just enough information to get what he wants out of them. And he even uses a threat. He says, if I get deported, I will take your daughter and your granddaughter to Moldova. Knowing that's a lie. They don't even want him in Moldova. He just knows that he needs to use the manipulation and the threats that he needs to make sure that he gets a job, which I don't even want to call it a job because he's not even doing anything. He just needs an employment letter. He's not doing anything. He's not actually doing any physical work.
Well, here's the thing. It's not a threat. It's not a threat. It's a manipulation because it's true. If he doesn't get his green card renewed, then yeah, he has to leave the country. He will be deported. Like, that's not a threat. He's using it to threaten Chuck. Like, you know what I mean? It's what can happen. But what I don't understand is if Andre hasn't worked the past 2 or 3 years or whatever it is, that is Andre's fault. I want to remind everybody, okay, including you crazies on Twitter who blew up our feed last night with all your notifications jumping down our throats for saying that Andre is a manipulator. You need help. You need help. You need as much help as Andre does. Guess what? You don't have to live tweet with us every week because hear what? If you watch this podcast and you think Andre has a dog in this fight and a leg to stand on, quit watching. We don't need the viewers that bad. I'm really sick of it. I'm really sick of it because I don't know how you watch this level of manipulation and narcissism and abuse. I used to feel bad for Libby. I don't feel bad for Libby anymore. Libby's not an abused woman, okay? Yeah. Libby is manipulating right along with Andre. She is a backstabber in between her family. And Chuck should not bail them out. He offered him before he even paid for the truck driving school. He offered him to work with the company. And it was Andre who refused and said, oh, you're going to hold stuff over my head. I don't want to do it. I don't want to work for Chuck. We're going to show him. Remember how many times he said, we're going to show him that we don't need him. We're moving out of his house and I don't care. And then Libby had to go behind his back and still ask Chuck to pay their rent. Don't get me started because my memory is long, it is deep, and I know how far this goes. So what I will say is this. I don't understand how what we witnessed last night, Libby getting all handsy with Becky, they would have had to call the cops on me and she would have ended up in the water. What are you crazy? And the fact that Chuck is such an ineffective leader, both professionally and personally, as the patriarch of the family and as the boss at the job and the business owner, that he allows this to happen on his watch. And he sits there and lets Andre say out of his mouth in front of him, oh, you see your family? You see what they're doing? Are you kidding me? And mind you, Andre doesn't want to work. He wants $100,000 from Chuck. And only because this was the condition that Chuck gave him to get money. This is why he's trying to weed out and separate Chuck from his own children in business so that he can have a direct line to Chuck and Chuck's bank account so he can continue to bleed him for money like he's been doing the past few years. And I'm sorry, I want to give you a chance to talk, but I had so much to say about that. But I'm just going to stop there.
I agree with you 100%. I agree with you 100%. Andre is manipulating, and I feel like Libby has taught him how to manipulate her father. I feel like she's been doing it her whole life. Because if you notice, Rebecca said, you are a spoiled brat, and you think whenever you start crying, you can get your way. And she has been manipulating her father since birth. And she is teaching and grooming Andre to manipulate him. And the only thing I can think of is what happens when Chuck dies, because neither of them want to work. Neither one of them. She's burned all of the bridges in her family. No one will ever give her money but Chuck. What happens when he leaves this earth?
Let me tell you what I know. An ineffective leadership in a family system is fatal. People will die. And people think like, oh my God, no, I mean that. People will die. It doesn't mean that somebody's going to murder someone. You don't necessarily have to pull out a gun and shoot somebody, but it's fatal because people get sick behind the stress. People die behind the stress. Chuck, I hate to say it, is borderline morbidly obese. Okay. If he should get sick, okay, he's divorced from his wife. His children are next of kin. Like, does he have a healthcare proxy in order? Who's going to try to get his ear on his deathbed to manipulate him to get something they want? Who's going to withhold from him what could be life-saving care just so he can die and they can collect an insurance policy? Ineffective leadership in a family system is absolutely fatal. People will die, okay? I know this from my own family system, and I have 3 dead members of my immediate family to prove it. So when I see it, yeah, I'm triggered, and I'm going to call my therapist.
Well, on that note, I'm just going to say there is an RV trip in the future where they all get in an RV together.
Couldn't pay me. Could you pay me to get on the trip? I don't care if cameras are rolling. I don't care. I don't care. I'm not going anywhere because I'm going to drag Libby up, down, and around, and I'm going to let her know that just because you manipulate our dad, and you have been manipulating our dad all this time, it doesn't work with me. I think Becky needs to drag her. All she needs is one good old fashioned ass whooping to gather her, and they'll stop. They'll stop. And Chuck, put your foot all the way down and stop siding with Andre while he disrespects your children in front of you.
Yes. Cut him off. Cut Libby off. Watch how fast they change their attitude. And on that note, that's it. That's it, guys. I cannot wait. Like I said, there's going to be an RV trip with all of the people on the boat together, and I am so excited to see how that turns out based on what happened last night. I'm George Mossey. This is Marshana, Dahlia, Spavento. Thank you so much for joining us for part 2 of the 90 Day Fiancé Happily Ever After podcast. I'll put our Twitters at the bottom. Make sure you live tweet with us next week and every week. We love talking about the show. But if you're a fan of Andre, don't.
No, I woke up to so many notifications this morning. It was crazy, and it was all hatred based on people who support Andre. Good night. Get off my Twitter.
On that note, good night, guys. Have a good week, and we will see you all next week.